Michelle Sterling for Friends of Science Society. Mark Carney predictably kicked off his leadership campaign for the Federal Liberal Party of Canada at his hometown hockey rink in Edmonton, Alberta. Of course, he's a big Oilers fan, right? And it's funny how the hockey stick has brought us to where we are today. Not this kind of hockey stick, but a graph known as the hockey stick. It's a very deceptive graph because it showed that there was no change in temperature before the modern temperature record, before the Industrial Revolution, before about 1860, and suddenly, boom, there was an increase in temperature. So the hockey stick graph, which appeared in the third report of the IPCC, prompted a lot of concern from a Canadian fellow named Steve McIntyre, who was a mining analyst. And he said, wow, I've seen that stick before. Because it's quite common, apparently, in mining scams to, put together a public offering and say, look at this, we're going to invest here, we're going to develop our mine, and then boom, we're all going to get rich. So that's a kind of hockey stick graph that was happening with Groupon, with Enron. So he became very suspicious and started analyzing the statistical data associated with this graph. And he and Ross McKittrick, who's another Canadian, an economist, they broke the hockey stick. They showed that it was an anomaly, that it was statistically flawed. And in fact, Mark Stein wrote a whole book about the problems with the scholarship behind the science of the hockey stick. So now we come to Mark Carney and his leadership campaign. A lot of people have been asking questions, including Rosie Barton of CBC, who almost always plays softball. She's been asking questions like, why are you running for the leadership of the party, when you have very good paying jobs with various corporations around the world? And he's quite evasive. He's saying that he's coming here to save the country. We're in a crisis. But the real crisis is the climate collapse. Because President Trump has pulled out of the Paris Agreement and all climate commitments dating back to 1992. He's also asked for a reevaluation of what's called the endangerment finding on CO2, meaning that at that time in, I believe it was 2009, there was a statement from the EPA in the States that carbon dioxide and related greenhouse gases are a danger to human health. And that's what's caused the near fanatical hatred of carbon dioxide and the efforts to turn it into a tradable commodity. And that's why Mark Carney's here. Because in COP29 of last year, the parties came to a conclusion about how to do Article 6, which refers to international carbon trading. This is something they've been working on ever since Enron. Enron was, in fact, the key proponent behind the Kyoto Accord. And there's a really interesting article by Lawrence Solomon from many years ago about Enron and the Palmisano Memo. So I invite you to look that up and see that everything old is new again with Article 6. It's really the reincarnation of Enron, but on a global scale. And one of my favorite energy commentators on X is Anas Al-Haji. So Anas Al-Haji calls carbon markets the mother of all Enrons. Now, in recent interviews, Mark Carney has made statements that he would declare an emergency and build infrastructure coast to coast. So most people think, oh yay, he actually wants to build pipelines. But no, he thinks that oil and gas assets are stranded assets, even though the world runs 81% on fossil fuels. And the reduction in fossil fuels due to the energy transition is almost nothing over the past 30 years and trillions of dollars spent. So Mark Carney is here to be the climate goalie. He's here to try and save all these big plans that the Green faction has put in place. So you should look at the climate control report from the U.S. House of Representatives Judiciary Committee, because it shows that there's been a skewing of global markets, and unbelievable collusion against normal operating legal corporations by this group of very influential asset managers. And it's all been really put together and led by Mark Carney. So have a look at some of the things that are posted below in the links, and note that Mr. Carney also wants you to have a heat pump in your home. He wanted the Canadian government to buy 1 million heat pumps rather than investing in EVs. This temperature is too cold for a heat pump to operate. You need to have a natural gas backup, and it'll cost you thousands and thousands of dollars to have a duplicate system to run when you really need heat. So that's what Mr. Carney is looking to establish in Canada, is an eco-dictatorship to save the collapsing climate house of cards. For Friends of Science Society, I'm Michelle Sterling.